remote viewing, and extraterrestrial contact with Alan Steinfeld. Alan is an icon in the areas of metaphysics and conscious evolution. He was one of the early voices telling us about our impending spiritual awakening, and it's unfolding now. Alan will share in this podcast what he has learned and what is to come, especially with regard to extraterrestrial contact. His latest work is Making Contact, Preparing for the New Realities of Extraterrestrial Existence. There is no other book on Earth quite like this one. We'll talk about this age of Aquarius that we are in now and help you answer the question, are you an alien hybrid? And now, Carefree and Conscious, Remote Viewing, and Extraterrestrial Contact. Alan Steinfeld, welcome to Carefree and Conscious.
Well, thanks, Susanne, for inviting me to your show and to your audience, your people. So, okay, ask me anything you want about.
You said that, and you know what? I'm going to do exactly that. So, Alan Steinfeld, are you happy with the evolution in consciousness that you're seeing with the people on the earth? And what would you like to see change about that?
Oh, that's a good question. First of all, I'm really happy because I think this is the most exciting time to be on the planet where this phase shift, we're going from one level of reality, one level of thinking about what's possible to this next opening, exciting adventure into the unknown. That's what we're faced with. For so long, people have been afraid of the unknown, but really what they're afraid of is just what they know and projecting that onto what they don't know. But the unknown offers so many potentials to change our world, to make people happier. The Piscean age of suffering and torture and martyrdom and all the things that have defined, the last couple of thousand years of human civilization, it can change. We're a place where there's still a lot of suffering, of course, but we have the technology, the intelligence. We just have to come together and realize that, like Bruce Lipton said to me in an interview I did with him, we're really all cells in one living organism called humanity. He says we're not humans until we create this organism called humanity. That makes us humans. That makes us part of this bigger connected world. So we're all connected. Consciousness is showing us that. And that's what remote viewing shows us as well, that we're all connected. There are no separations. I'm sure you hear this all the time, but it's becoming an actuality. It's becoming a fact. The Nobel Prize in Physics was just won by people who proved that entanglement is a reality. You affect something here, it's affected no matter how far on the other side of the universe. Somehow they were able to detect that. So we're all entangled. We're all entangled with each other. Everything we do affects everybody else. So if we can do the highest, most compassionate actions, then that may be the effect other people feel as well. So yes, it's exciting times.
And I'm holding up the book for our listeners, Making Contact. It's also in Alan's background right now. And this is your latest book. And the tagline is Preparing for the New Realities of Extraterrestrial Existence. Well, New Realities has been your tagline for a very long time. Have you seen this coming?
Well, have I seen which part coming? That it's new realities?
Yeah. I mean, are we in new realities day to day? Is there one leap into a new reality? Is the Making Contact the last big leap that you've really been looking for? I mean, what's it all about?
What's it all about is the big question we've been trying to find out. But new realities is an individual thing. How much are people willing to let go of what they know their habits. This is what Joe Dispenza talks about, their habits of being, the habits of being themselves, and try something new. Like try walking home from work or the store a different way. Try something new, because there's so much. And I talk a lot about cognition and recognition. Cognition is the ability to absorb new stimuli, and recognition is then you have been able to see a pattern in the world that you can then, that you've cognized, that you can recognize. So recognition is only the after fact of cognition, and cognition is the idea of creating new realities, of new stimuli in your environment that are constantly knocking at the door, but we walk around like this in a very narrow scope of possibilities. But in your work, Susan, is that people are becoming more psychic. They're starting to activate what some have called fifth dimensional awareness, where intuition, psychic impressions, ideas of other beings that exist all around us, that that psychology has put us into a box saying, no, there are no beings. If you see something, you're crazy. So I think psychology has done us, a lot of service to helping us understand ourselves, but it's also mistrust our own mind. So now it's a chance for most people, I don't think most people are pretty sane. Of course, there are these crazies out there, but I think you can recognize that. But if you're just thinking something or having a vision or getting a download, that's a reality that you can trust, that you can say, wow, you can feel that your mind is open and you're getting this, it's inspiration. It's coming to you, and it's coming from somewhere that is trying to communicate beyond this visible world. So,
well, playing devil's advocate here, should there be an objective reality?
There should be, but there can't be.
Explain.
No, I don't think there should. It's not should. The illusion is that there is. And of course, we come to an agreement about what reality is, but that doesn't mean it's objective. It just means we're part of the same kind of cultural brainwashing. It's brainwashing, it's conditioning, it's social conditioning. Think that there is this objective world. I mean, there's perspective. There is a world out there, but there's something out there, but it's our conditioning and social education that makes us agree upon what's out there. So we think that it's objective, but it's really all coming through your consciousness. And that consciousness is, it's like the Vesica Pisces, that part in the middle that is shared, that is, I wouldn't say objective, but it's a shared reality, shared, because we've come to an agreement that this is what it is, and we're vibrating at the same level. So there's a lot of people I'm sure you can talk to that have no idea what you're talking about when you give readings and mediums and all that. It's just not in their little wheelhouse of possibilities. But for us who know it's true, who had those experiences, it's not only possible, it's part of our everyday world. So that's an evolution. I'm not saying, it's better or worse. It's just more evolved. So because we're taking in a bigger picture of this, I think really the words subject and object are out of date. That duality doesn't really exist, especially this is what the ET UFO phenomena is teaching.
Yes.
It can somehow do our heads and deal with us in our dream level. And that's so subjective, your dreams.
Yeah, I don't teach duality. I think that I did. I think most of us did, but I teach interdimensionality.
Right.
So how do we get to know ourselves better through this process of opening up to other possibilities and new realities? And should we, I mean, do you feel like it's healthy for everybody? Or are there going to be some people that no matter what, if they get that blasted thing they want of a UFO or a UAP landing on the White House lawn at a big press conference, if that thing that I'm so sick of hearing people saying, well, why don't they do this? You know, the Fermi paradox, if they're out there, why don't we all know about it? Even if that happened, wouldn't there be some people that would just go hide, like go underground? I mean, what are we afraid to learn about ourselves? What's going on here?
Well, you say, is it healthy to be open to that? I think it's healthier to be open than to be closed-minded. I mean, that's the conditioning that we're overcoming, the social conditioning, the fact that there is me and you, and the fact that, and what we've been taught is that we're separate, and that, you know, as we're speaking and coming together, we are merging the subjective and object. These are really old forms. Duality, yes, is an illusion. Even time and space is an illusion. Even we're illusions. Our identities are illusions. So making contact, number one, is making contact with yourself. What is that? Who are we? Who are we? I mean, what is this? What is the illusion of the personality, and what's our relationship to time, space? These are all the big questions that I'm excited about, not even answering, but just asking, you know, and discovering. So there's a world out there that's trying to wake us up to something bigger. And we just say, no, go away. I want to just stay in our little box here. We're living in these little square boxes. And that's, you know, to step outside the box means that we have to be something different. So UFOs, this whole thing shakes people up. They shake because there's no way to fit them into a very limited social conditioning, social, you know, construct, because we've been taught that they don't exist. So if someone says they do, they're usually ridiculed, because people identify with their beliefs. So if you say something is different than what they believe, if you insult people's football team or their political party or their mother, for that reason, I mean, people identify with their beliefs. So that defines themselves. Yes, I'm a Mets fan, Yankee fan, whatever, you know, it's like, and if you insult their baseball team, they take that very personally, because they are so identified. I mean, you ever go to Cincinnati on a Cincinnati Reds game?
Yes, actually I did about 2 years ago. I have family there. Yeah.
Right.
That's a wild crowd, man.
But you know, if you come out against the baseball, it's actually you can actually incite a riot. You can actually be assaulted if you.
To be fair, that happened also at a Giants game. That kind of craziness, that San Francisco and Los Angeles. But yeah, it's like why they're so identified. And so you're making this point of how we get something we believe in, we get grounded, rooted, we think, with it. And so we got to hold on tight, right?
Exactly. So that's the problem. That's not them, though. They're you're not your beliefs. You're not your history. You're not your name. You're not your. I mean, this is common knowledge. If anyone who's ever done meditation, you know, you start to transcend those aspects of the mind, the very superficial mind, and then you drop into the part that can't be defined. So that's the part we start to get in touch with, the part that, you know, in meditation, we start to get in touch with the part that transcends the limitations of identity and belief. So that's the beginning of making contact with something bigger than ourselves, something that includes more of ourselves. I mean, this is very basic. I'm sure your audience is way beyond this level, but
it's going on YouTube. So hopefully there was some people that are like, wait, I don't know about this whole alien thing, but this guy's got some creds. I'm going to listen to this. We'll take them along a little gently, but let's take a step ahead. Let's talk about that transcending the superficial mind and talk a little bit about remote viewing. You've had an amazing opportunity to do a lot of research and teaching in remote viewing. So what's the first step?
The first step is really understanding what that means. And it's the fact that our minds, these things that are in our brains that I don't think is generated by the brain, but is received, like, the announcer is not inside the radio. You can open up the radio and look for the musicians and all that. I mean, if you didn't know what those machines were, you'd think, oh, that's coming. But it's a signal. The signal is being received by the radio or your cell phone. And if your cell phone breaks, it doesn't mean you stop getting calls. You goes to the cloud and you pick up a new phone, and there you pick up your calls. So anyway, the signal is being received. These are receivers and senders of thought. But thought, this is my belief, is not contained in the brain. It's generated and manifested through the hardware. But it's like we're using these computers as hardware, but we're not in a way, we're in the computers because we need the mechanism to bring up the image, but it's a signal that's being received. So if we get this idea of signal, of thoughts, of who we are, then we can start to understand that we're non-local, just like me and you and everyone else here, we're non-local. We're not in the computer in a way. Yes, our image is, but wherever we are in this non-local world. So our brains are non-local receivers of individual aspects of the mind or soul even. And since we're not local, we're connected to the field. Let's call it the field. So if you want to see what's not immediately in your environment, the course in non-locality or remote viewing is to first disconnect from the personality, everything that we just talked about, your identity, your history, your name, if you can do that enough, you just drop into this emptiness of presence. And with that, you use your mind to intend a target, what they call targets in the remote viewing world. Let's say I have a friend who's at a certain location and I say, can you tune into this person? We don't have to do it here, but we could. And then you just put your intention and then you receive, then you let yourself receive the images like you do in your work, Susan. And you let yourself receive the signal from the non-local field. So I could say to people watching, what's in my pocket? And then you just let those images, and we do this in the class, come to you because you're receiving the signal. The problem is, and I talk about this in the class, is separating the noise from the signal. The noise is all the things we're thinking about all the time in our heads, and that gets in the way of what's actually coming from the pure signal in the world. And then the problem is, and as a medium and psychic, that if you start to interpret the signal and say, oh, it's like this, you start to confuse the raw information with the interpretation, or what they call in remote viewing analytical overlays. Oh, yeah. And so the idea is that the whole thing began when the CIA found out that the Russians were using psychic spying to find out what we were doing. So the CIA says, we can't let the Russians get ahead of us, so we need to develop a psychic spying program. They went to Stanford Research Institute, SRI, and they didn't want to call it psychic spying because that sounds a little too weird for...
Not good for funding decisions, huh?
Oh, psychic spying, that sounds like... So the guy who created the program really was a psychic called Ingo Swann, who I'm sure you've heard of. Ingo Swann was asked to come to help put up to Stanford to start the program, and said, "Oh, can you see what's in the basement there?" And he goes, "What in these?" And he's looking at these meters in the basement underneath SRI, and say, "What do you see?" He go, "Well, I'm remote viewing these things," and that's where the term came from Ingo Swann, who described his process of viewing. But of course, there's remote sensing, there's remote healing, there's remote influencing. These ideas that thoughts are things. So what I say in the class, and I am starting a class, is it in the chat there? Oh yeah, I'll start, I'll put this in here. I'm starting a class actually in a few days through LightNet. This woman, Zinka Caro, has this whole online school of different ways of making contact, and one is remote viewing, one is channeling, one is light language, one is astrology. So on January 31st, I'm teaching an 8-week class where we're not just remote viewing what we know, but once we learn the basics and everyone is skilled in this, then there's an agreement. I say, okay, I'm looking at a target, or there's a target, and everyone can get those basic skills. Then we go off planet. Then we go to other star systems, and we start making contact with the beings out there. Because if we can get an agreement, and that's the hardest part, in a way, there is some kind of objective reality, because when people remote view, it's subjective and objective. I say, if we've all went to see the same movie, and then you tell me what the movie's about, we'll all probably say different things, although we've all seen the same movie, but we've seen our own version of the movie. So it's like that kind of really fluid understanding of subject and object. There is something that we each interpret in our own way. So when we're remote viewing something, it's that process is still happening. We're interpreting it in our own way, and we're seeing it, but there is this points of reference that overlap. So we will see similar features. If you've seen the same movie, you might focus on like the costumes, and I might focus on the acting. And so we essentially seen a different movie, but we've also seen the same movie. That's why those ideas of subject and object, it comes through our filter, just like the remote viewing targets, but we're remote viewing the same target, but it's interpreted or sensed differently. But because right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. What about two-way communication during a remote view of a sentient being?
Well, yeah, definitely. There's psychic communication going on. So when we go off planet, so if we get a sort of an agreement of what we know, then we go off planet and remote view what there's really no way of verifying. So let's just say before we go off planet, I'm remote viewing a picture of the Sphinx, let's say. And it's like, oh, people getting like the foot or the head or the desert, and they're all getting aspects of the target. But then I show the picture, and those picture has all those aspects, even though people are getting different parts of it. But if we go off planet and we get some people tune into the sound, some people tune into the mental influences. So if we understand that we're a team and we're going off planet together and all getting parts of the remote viewing, which is what happened in the CIA or Stanford Research Institute, they do teams and everyone get a little piece, and they put together the piece and they say, oh yeah, the Russians are here in their army at this location. If we could do that, and when I say let's go to Sirius or the Pleiades or these new planets or astro, then we start to put together what we found, and we see what's out there. And this is actually something the government is also doing, using remote viewing to look at extraterrestrial races. I know that sounds really out there, but
you would know. I mean, you just saw Russell Targ not too long ago, and do you see Hal Puthoff? Or
I haven't seen Hal in a while, but Russell did celebrate my birthday with me just the other day. So
happy birthday!
Thank you, January 22nd. So I'm just saying that's the idea of making contact. That's not what my book's about, actually, but that's the next step of it. My book's about an overview of the situation, but I'm taking it to the next level of this understanding that if our minds are really non-local, which I think they are, which you as a medium psychic, how do you get that information? How do you get what you're getting? Right? It just
Right.
comes.
Right.
Tell me how you do get what you're getting when
For me, if it's psychic, I'm reading the energy field.
Right.
And if it's mediumship, I'm going to a discarnate who's telling me their subjective reality, what the information they want to give me. It's a lot more fun to just do your thing, go out of body, whatever. I can remember one time a friend of mine, a very, very dear friend, she asked me to pray for her surgery. And I said, okay, well, I'm actually going to come in and check on you. And I meant, physically and spiritually, I was going to come and check on you. She says, well, not the first day after surgery, because, I'm sure I'm going to be a mess. And I said, oh, that's okay. I'll call your husband and I'll check. I did a remote view in the hospital room. And later she said, I had a dream. You and I were floating over me while I was being operated on. Mm-hmm. And I've had people see me, as I'm remote viewing or out of body or whatever. It's something I've done since childhood. So that leads me to my next question, which a lot of students have given me. Do they need special skills coming in to learn remote viewing? And the second part of that is, are you teaching controlled remote viewing, which means you learn sort of like a shorthand?
Yeah, that's core. But do you need special skills to remote view? Well, so it's like we say, everyone can play the piano, but just some people can play it better because they have a certain facility. But this is basic to everyone. I mean, psychic awareness, cognition, remote cognition, it's who we are. It's just how much have we been available and open to understanding that's who we are. So some people, I think if you're more creative, if you have more intuitive, these are actually messages coming from the field and in general at first. So it's like, if you're really left-brained and you're really like into things being very controlled and certain and defined, then that's a little harder because those are limitations that are not natural to the mind that is always perceiving other realities. We're always perceiving other realities.
Well, gosh, Alan, that's exactly the same thing as teaching intuitive abilities. That's what we come up against. That and the issue of I don't know if I can do this. I don't know. I don't want to feel out of control. I don't want to go into just a black space, which I think of as a quantum field. People that really have to have control, that we can bring them along, but they have a harder time trusting what they're getting. And you develop trust by repetition. By doing it again and again and again.
We're in remote viewing, we're using our right brain that is most of the time disconnected from the left brain that wants to control. So when I ask people I have something that's what we call a target, like some object, right. People, place, things, time, or event, and that's the target. And when people get that target, I say, how did you get that? Because people seem to get it miraculously, and the best answer that they can say is, I don't know.
Yes. Beautiful. That's it. That's like, I just gave over to the unity consciousness.
Right. Like if you ask how you do what you do, you just do it, right?
Yeah. It goes this way, it goes that way, but the rest of it,
Well, we don't know because we're very disconnected from our intuitive mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a cognition. It is a cognitive facility we all have to remote view. It's like any cognitive ability where we look at the world and we see patterns. Patterns is how we understand the world. I've just been writing about this. So you see, your mother shows you a picture of a horse and you understand that pattern of thing is a horse. And then you finally see a horse out there in the field. You go, oh my God, it's a horse. And then, that because you have this pattern recognition of what horses are. And then if you've never seen a picture of an elephant, and you finally saw something like that, you wouldn't know what that was because there's no cognitive awareness. So what I'm saying is cognition is the key to understanding new realities. If you are confronted with the unknown, don't try to put it into the known. That's the old joke that I say about UFOs. It's called unidentified flying object. It's unidentified. So when you see it, if you say it's a UFO, you're just identifying it as unidentified, which means nothing. It means absolutely nothing to call something a UFO because I think, of course, they're off-world craft. Why don't we call them that? That would be a lot more honest and real to identify something. And this is what the government is saying. I'm going to tell you right here. These are not ours. These are not Chinese. They're not Russians. They're not some kind of third world drones. And this is the closest they've gotten to acknowledging it. And it's kind of funny what they're willing to say without saying the A word. They're not from any country that we know. That's as close as they'll get to saying, well, they're alien or extraterrestrial. I mean, that's how childish, and that's a whole other conversation, and how they're treating us like children because they want to know what they want to keep what they know about these things to themselves. And of course, they think we're too immature or child or reactionary. And they don't know what these things are. The government doesn't know. Politicians don't know. Even people who've had experiences, even I have had, I don't know what these things are. And if I say, and lots of people do, oh, they're Pleiadian, Syrian, all that, maybe they are, but not until we go visit those planets with our remote viewing will we know what those things really are.
Oh, so remote viewing is a great tool for identifying and really, it's funny because I'm thinking, I feel like you have a mission, and I've wondered, do you think maybe you're a hybrid?
I think I am a hybrid. I think a lot of,
have you ever disclosed this before, Alan, or is this an exclusive?
It's in my book, actually.
Which one?
This book in chapter.
I've read 4 chapters of it so far. This has investigators, researchers, abductees, and contact expert interviews in it. And you can go, you don't have to sit down and devote a whole bunch. You can pick it up and read a chapter and you will come back. And I got to tell you something, because Alan, I know from other books that you have this history of your own personal contact for many, many years. So tell us about.
Well, it's in chapter 7 of this book. Actually, I'll put a link to that in the chat here. The link to the Amazon, where you can buy on Amazon. You can also vote for it, even if you haven't read the book. Vote for it at the upcoming Conscious Life Expo Awards coming. I'll be in LA talking about this book, and on February 10th to the 12th at the LAX Hilton for the Conscious Life Expo. But yeah, talk about my experiences. Yes, I'm happy to. Where should I begin with?
It's not really in your comfort zone quite yet, is it?
No, it's just hard to talk about because it's so outside the box. I mean, I've liked writing out the box of what people can relate to, but I think, yes, we're all hybrids, first of all. We've all been genetically.
That's not what I meant.
No, I'm starting there. And I think, yes.
Okay.
My family lineage have been modified by alien contact to eventually have my genetics merge with these ET genetics to make a fully developed hybrid race.
Would you have said this 20 years ago?
Well, I didn't really understand it in the same way. I didn't understand, but I do know that my grandmother, this is my mother's side, some people, they follow their father's line, some people follow their mother's line, but generally it's at least 3 or 4 generations from where we are now. My grandmother, my mother, even though they would never admit that because they wouldn't admit, but I always felt connected to the stars. I always felt looking up at the stars was like going home, so I never felt really connected to my family. That's another sign that you're a starseed. It's like, and there's usually one in every family. I'm sure you were the one there where it's like everyone else is pretty normal. They do the normal things and you're just off doing your own thing. I mean, I had to watch Star Trek every week, the original. I would not eat. I'd stop doing anything because that was feeding me information that I was available to. My mother would say, "Why are you looking at that stuff?" And it's like, this was food for me. It was awakening, and because no one else was talking about going to other planets. And I mean, I'm not saying this isn't a great planet. It is one of my favorite planets, Earth. It is a fantastic planet, and we have to appreciate what's here and take care of it and all that. But the universe is full of mystery and possibilities and unknown realities. So I feel a lot of us are connected to the stars and that we are hybrids here because we're bringing in the new consciousness or different consciousness. We're looking at the world differently. Let's just put it that way. In order to include, I feel, a bigger reality that is what's needed because we're really destroying the earth with our very exclusive, selfish, single-minded, limited materialistic reality. If the person who has the most things wins, that we're destroying the planet. Why not share our things together? And, it's not about winning or losing. That's duality. It's about sharing. It's about cooperation. It's about co-evolution. I mean, these are all very idealistic, but I think I'm an Aquarian. We're coming into the Aquarian age, So I think these things, everything I'm saying is possible. We just have to recognize who we are as infinite beings. And I always think, isn't it sort of ironic that the CIA and Stanford Research Institute introduced the world to their divinity, to their cosmic beingness?
The irony of materialist scientists.
Yes.
Helping this path go forward.
Yes, but we are infinite. That's the ultimate bottom line. And so are these sentient beings that we're meeting. So we've just been so isolated and so brainwashed to think we're the only ones. And, that we are living in that life is an anomaly, that it's an accident. That, it just came up as a kind of freak of nature, that life, little single cells were, sparked by some electrical bolt that started the amino acids reproducing and all that. And I do think that happened, but with the higher intention of consciousness coming in. So I think both. I think there's a descent, a de-evolution in a sense of supreme, I'm not saying we're God, but some higher form of whatever consciousness is descending into the bodies, and there's also the evolution of the body. So there's de-evolution and evolution.
All right. Well, speaking of evolution, what is your simplest to follow definition of ascension? We hear about come to this workshop. It's an Ascension workshop. We're both going to be at the Sedona Ascension retreat coming up this spring. And I get asked this question a lot, and I find myself, if I give a simple answer to it, it always leads into a longer conversation. What do you say Ascension is?
Well, that's a great question, but there's many levels to talk about this on.
Okay.
Right? So that's why it's not a simple answer. On the first level is the ascension is just the conversation we're having now. We're ascending to include a bigger view of the cosmos. That's an ascension. On another level, it's a kind of a spiritual awakening where you know you're part of this total field of consciousness. You know you're part of this. That's a next level. And then, I've met J.J. Hurtak. You know who he is?
Of course.
Actually took his physical being, he met these beings, and he was able to move that physical vibration to another level of reality. That is an ascension that I think all of us, when we start to bring these higher frequencies in to our physical body as a reality, not just as an imaginative concept. Of course, it starts with the imagination and comes in. When we can start to bring this in, we start to vibrate. And you could use mantras, or you could do visualization, or you can just use nature, to increase the vibratory rate that we feel this frequency moving in the physical form. And I think the ultimate, or maybe not the ultimate, but the next level of ascension is to ignite the biophotonic potential in each cell and transmute that into light. That's the next level of ascension. That's maybe what people like Jesus, or the rainbow bodies in the Tibetan Buddhism, or what the Toltecs call burning from a fire from within. I mean, ascension has happened. It's what happened to
transformation to light body.
Yes, light body, changing the physical body into light body.
Mm-hmm.
In India, there's a great tradition. Ramalinga is a guy who, have you ever been to India? There's a place where there's a square in this room, and where is that? Pondicherry, where he left the planet with his body. So this is our destiny as human beings, is to ascend this piece of earth. We're walking around in little pieces of earth, into light, into sun, into solar beings, from earth beings to solar beings. It means we're illuminated as a natural course of what I call, the getting off the karmic wheel. You can get off the karmic wheel, but then you just come back. But the reason we're incarnated, what do you think the reason? I have my own understanding. Why do you think we're in these bodies?
It's a great question. I go back to identifying and leveraging the individual's unique gift and bringing that forward to bear to make Earth more like a heavenly place to live, and also learning to give and receive as much compassion and forgiveness as we humanly can, knowing that we have a lot of limiters. We've got the brain as a filter. It all comes down to me, Alan. It's like remembering who we are and acting upon it.
Right. We're remembering who we are, but we're also here because we didn't have to come in to remember who we are, right? Because we've already knew who we are before we incarnated. So
which is another frequently asked question. If we're the highly evolved souls that we are, why bother with Earth?
I'll tell you, I mean, my belief, I'm not saying this is true, to have experience. We're here to have experience. So like we're painting the painting, but you don't really experience the painting until you jump inside the painting and you know what it is. So we've taken on the veil of ignorance. This is classic teachings. But in order to experience the world and through experiences have feelings, have the feeling of those experiences, the feelings of those emotions. I think feeling is the reason. And in the feelings, we own the experience, and there's all sorts of experiences, there's the Sufi saying, what is sadness to the soul is delight to the spirit, So, that difference between the soul is the vehicle to hold the experience in a feeling sense, as a feeling quality. And so I separate the ideas of emotion and feelings from each other. Emotionality is what people get trapped in their drama. This happened to them and this happened to them. And that's all emotionality. So,
and they'll try to escape from it, which can create a whole other set of problems. So it's have the experience, have the emotion, process the feelings, don't run from them, integrate the experience and feelings, and create wisdom. So that creating the wisdom is helping others, helping lift up others as well.
Right, exactly.
Well, that's the bottom line then of life. So I want to take some student questions with our remaining time. Let's get to some questions. Diane, can you bring Lisa on?
Well, hi, first of all, hi.
Lisa.
So basically what I mean is that, all right, so now we're getting, I don't know, like a download or something. Something is talking to you. Do you engage? Like, how do you know that you should be engaging with this?
Are you talking about it like in a remote viewing setting or just something?
Just in meditation or, or something of that nature.
So discernment.
Exactly.
Okay. So cautions for discernment when you're making contact with someone who's not now in a body.
Right, exactly.
Okay. And I know that when I ask, are you from the light? I can sense whether an answer is honest, a vibration is honest, but they don't typically come to me or fool with me because it's like I have a burglar alarm sticker on my aura that says protective, will be a pain in the neck if you try to mess with her. And I think it's because every morning I'm doing grounding and centering. I'm really interested in this question about cautions. What are the cautions that person should take when they're remote viewing? So we'll give Alan a chance to answer that. Are there cautions that you guys take before you remote view in your classes?
Well, before you do anything, I think you want to check in. How's it feeling there? How are you? I just always know that we're protected. I mean, that's my sense. So you resonate with the highest, you're going to attract the highest. And that hasn't really come up. We did remote view once, the center of the black hole at the center of the galaxy, which really was very disorienting. A lot of us went in there and it was just so chaotic and so confusing. Actually, that should have been a precaution, but we didn't know until we got there. It's like,
so you can you just pull back, like, whoops, and close the door behind you type of deal? I don't know.
If you're going to a planet that's not, in any way, and some people are too sensitive to remote view certain objects, certain things, if there's like.
Good point.
Sometimes we remote view some like 911. The state center. Some people are just too, there's too much like horror and trauma there. And if you're remote viewing, you do pick that stuff up. But as far as like something's coming into your mind, which is what the question was, then, see how it feels. And you could shut anything out that you don't want to be there, you don't want to connect with. You can just say, okay, you don't have to answer the door just because someone's ringing your doorbell. You just take a little peek. How's it feel? So discernment is key. And we generally do it as a group. And it's an exploration into the unknown. So I wouldn't worry about that. I mean, I wouldn't even project that. I wouldn't even, the unknown is the unknown because we don't know what that is. So if you want to project all of what you fear of the known onto the unknown, then that's really not the unknown. The unknown is full of possibility, wonder, magic, and infinite potential. So that's what I see.
I like how you tied it back to the feelings, because you're the soul inside the body, and you just know when things are not right, and you don't have to take it. Yeah. And remote viewing can happen in past, present, future. It's so open because we're outside of space time. So there's so many things you can see. I actually did know somebody who was in a remote viewing practice group, and they went to 9/11, and for a lot of people, it was very hopeful, helpful, and healing. It gave them some kind of closure. And these were folks that lived in that area. But as an example, yeah, life is messy. You're right. If you're remote viewing a different planet, I would think if something doesn't want to engage with you, they just won't.
Right. And sometimes they don't want you there, and sometimes you're ignored, or sometimes they say, where have you been? We've been waiting for you. That's really the kind of feeling a lot of us get, on making contact. It's like, oh, thank you. It's been a long time.
And that leads me to a question from Sherry in our studio audience of My Carefree Souls. She wants to know, why would they even bother with us? What is in it for them, meaning people off world, or being
that's one of my favorite questions.
Right, of course.
Because did you ever have a splinter in your little toe, and it really makes you uncomfortable throughout your whole body? Well, since we're all connected, we're like the little splinter in the toe there. That is like a kind of irritation.
We're a plank. We're a plank in the toe.
Exactly. So as long as we're so chaotic and disharmonious and confused, that really sends a wave, because consciousness is non-local and it's all connected. It's the wave of our dramas that is just so disruptive to a lot of other consciousnesses that are related to us on this level. So yeah, why bother? Because we're disturbing, and that's their problem too. I mean, that's their challenge. They create us in their reality, because there's obviously something we're all learning about this level. But when you have disruption and then suddenly everything's peaceful, it's like, what did you learn from the disruption? And like in your office there,
when my office was destroyed by a monsoon and the ensuing flood from above me. Yeah.
What did you learn about that? You learned how to be prepared. You learned a lot of things.
Oh, I don't want to be prepared for that, Alan.
No, it's not the only.
Our alien friends warn us.
It's not the only way to learn about something. We could learn about it by extending our consciousness and remote viewing, or just tuning in and seeing things. But, this is evolution. As we evolve, as we learn more about who we are and what we can do, we're expanding our mind, and these other beings are also expanding their minds by connecting with us. So it's definitely a group process.
It has been a delight. I want you to have just an open moment here. What do you want to leave us with? What is most pressing that you want to share with us right now at this moment?
Oh, that's nice. Well, first of all, that each of us are infinite beings. You know that. I'm sure you teach that we all have the capacity to know everything about anything, anytime. It's like that is our birthright, this infinite mind. The more we can make contact with that, I think the happier we'll be, the more harmonious with each other, the more peaceful. We'll be able to drop into a place of peace, which is really why we came in, because that is the level playing field. That's how it's supposed to be. As we move into fifth dimensional, whatever you want to call it, ascended realities, we start from peace. We start from being at peace. And what comes from that, my thesis is the ability to feel more, to be more sensitive, to create. You know, the reason people create art is not for pretty pictures, is so people can feel more of what their potential is. It's songs, dance, pictures, paintings, all that, even movies. It's all about how much can we feel. I think that's the real expansion, is being sensitive. You can't be too sensitive.
Wow. And there's so many classes and books written about helping the sensitive person. And it really is all about being thankful that you have those gifts, but not carrying all of the weight of the world on your shoulders, knowing that this is, it's kind of like the gym where we're coming to work out our spiritual muscles here in a way, I guess.
Right. You're working it out, but just because you're sensitive to something doesn't mean you have to take it on.
There you go.
That's a big lesson to learn. We can feel things, and the idea is to keep feeling, but doesn't mean it has to disturb you. Yes, it is disturbing because we're all one, but we have to project harmony. Remote influencing is sending out those peaceful vibrations, so other people pick those things up. Like they did those meditation practices. They go to neighborhoods that were high crime, and they found that the more people meditated, the more the crime went down. So those are possibilities that we have as empowered people to affect the field. This is a field of energy we're living in, and we can receive and we can give to it. We're not victims of it. We are influencers of it if we decide that we are. So start making contact with yourself, with the planet, with each other, the other beings, the infinite realms. And I think there's a great adventure waiting for all of us when we realize our capacities of the mind, of the greater mind. So we're just learning to grow up.
There's a great adventure for all of us when we are ready to realize the capacities of our own mind, our own consciousness, and to seek inner peace. That is something beautiful to just float with for the rest of the day, no matter what you have to do.
Exactly.
Exactly.
People can come to the remote viewing class that's in the chat. They can also vote for my book, Making Contact.
I want everybody to vote, please.
Because even if you haven't read the book, I've
only read 4 chapters. I'm going to go read the rest of it now. Now that I know you talk about being a hybrid, I have to read it.
Yes, chapter 7 is my chapter where I write about my hybrid. But, we're all in this together. Right. So we're all making contact with a new level. And that's why we have to keep having these conversations, So
I'm always smiling. Every time I have a conversation with you, see you in conversation, always smiling. Alan Steinfeld, thank you.
Thank you so much for being here and welcoming me to your class. Thank you.